Look, I need to tell you something that most financial advisors won't admit. If you're keeping your silver in a bank safe deposit box right now, you're making a critical mistake that could cost you everything when this system finally breaks. And I'm not being dramatic here. Let me explain exactly what's happening behind the scenes that nobody's talking about. You know what's interesting? Most people think a safe deposit box is the safest place for their precious metals. It makes sense, right? The bank has security, cameras, vault doors that look like something out of a heist movie. But here's what they don't tell you when you sign that rental agreement. You don't actually own that box in any meaningful legal sense. You're renting space in a facility that the bank controls completely. And when things go sideways, that control becomes a massive problem. Let me paint you a picture of what happened in 2008. You remember the financial crisis, right? Banks were failing left and right. Bear Stearns collapsed. Lehman Brothers went under. The whole system was teetering on the edge. Now, here's what most people don't know. During that chaos, several banks restricted access to safe deposit boxes. Not permanently, but for days, sometimes weeks. Imagine that. You've got your silver sitting in a box, the dollar is collapsing, silver prices are spiking, and you can't get to your metal because the bank decided to limit access during the crisis. You're locked out of your own wealth at the exact moment you need it most. But it gets worse. Way worse. Because there's a legal framework already in place that allows the government to seize the contents of safe deposit boxes during a national emergency. You think I'm making this up? Go look at Executive Order 6102 from 1933. Franklin Roosevelt literally made it illegal for Americans to own gold. The government went door to door, confiscating gold from citizens, forcing them to sell at below market prices. And you know where they found a lot of that gold? In bank safe deposit boxes. The banks handed over the records. They had no choice. They were regulated entities under government control. Now you might be thinking, that was 1933. Things are different now. Are they? Let me tell you what's happening right this second that should terrify anyone storing precious metals in a bank. The IRS has been quietly expanding its authority to access safe deposit box records without a warrant. In 2021, the FBI raided a private vault company in Beverly Hills called U.S. Private Vaults. They seized the contents of 1,400 safe deposit boxes. The total value? Over $86 million. And here's the kicker. Most of those box holders weren't charged with any crime. The government just took their stuff. Cash, gold, silver, jewelry. Gone. And many of those people are still fighting in court to get their property back. Think about the precedent that sets. If the government can raid a private vault company and seize everything without charging anyone with a crime, what makes you think your bank's safe deposit box is safe? Banks are even more regulated than private vault companies. They have to comply with every government request. They have no legal obligation to protect your property from seizure. In fact, most safe deposit box agreements explicitly state that the bank has no liability for the contents. You could have $1 million in silver sitting in that box, and if the government shows up with paperwork, the bank will hand it over without even calling you. But let's talk about something even more immediate than government seizure. Let's talk about bank failures. You know the FDIC insures your bank deposits up to $250,000, right? But here's what they don't advertise. Safe deposit boxes are not covered by FDIC insurance. Not even a little bit. If your bank fails and somehow your safe deposit box gets compromised, lost, or damaged in the chaos, you have zero recourse. The bank's insurance might cover some liability, but good luck proving what was in that box. You think they're going to take your word that you had 500 ounces of silver in there? They're going to fight you every step of the way. And we're seeing banks fail right now. Silicon Valley Bank collapsed in March 2023. Signature Bank went under days later. First Republic Bank failed in May. These weren't small community banks. These were major institutions with billions in assets. And every time a bank fails, there's chaos. Access gets restricted. Accounts get frozen. The FDIC takes over and starts sorting through the mess. And if you've got silver in a safe deposit box at one of these failed banks, you're at the mercy of a bureaucratic process that could take months or years to resolve. Here's another angle nobody talks about. Banks are closing safe deposit box services entirely. Chase Bank announced in 2019 they were phasing out safe deposit boxes at many branches. Bank of America has been quietly doing the same thing. Why? Because it's not profitable for them, and the liability is too high. So what happens if your bank decides to discontinue the service? They give you notice, usually 30 to 60 days, and you have to remove your contents. But what if you're traveling? What if you're elderly and can't easily move heavy metals? What if you don't get the notice because it went to an old address? The bank will drill the box, remove the contents, and turn everything over to the state as abandoned property. And then you're dealing with the state's unclaimed property division, which is a nightmare of bureaucracy and paperwork. Let me tell you about something that happened in Greece during their financial crisis in 2015. The government imposed capital controls. Banks were closed for weeks. ATMs had withdrawal limits of 60 euros per day. And safe deposit boxes? Completely inaccessible. People who had gold and silver stored in Greek banks couldn't get to it. They were locked out while their currency collapsed and their savings evaporated. The metal was sitting right there, but it might as well have been on the moon. They couldn't use it, couldn't sell it, couldn't access it in any way. Now, you're probably thinking, that's Greece. That could never happen in America. Really? Let me walk you through what's happening right now in the United States that's setting up the exact same scenario. The federal debt just crossed $36 trillion. That's trillion with a T. The interest payments alone are over $1 trillion a year now. That's more than we spend on defense. The dollar is being debased at an accelerating rate. The M2 money supply has exploded, and foreign countries are dumping U.S. Treasury bonds at record levels. China, Russia, Saudi Arabia. They're all reducing their dollar holdings and buying gold instead. The BRICS nations just announced they're developing a gold-backed currency to compete with the dollar. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, plus about 40 other countries that want to join. They represent half the world's population and a third of global GDP, and they're all moving away from the dollar and toward gold and silver as monetary assets. What do you think happens to the dollar when half the world stops using it for trade? It collapses. And when it collapses, the government is going to be desperate for assets to back the currency. And guess what asset they're going to come after? The same one they came after in 1933. Gold and silver. And here's the thing. They already know where a lot of it is. Because it's sitting in bank-safe deposit boxes with paper trails and rental agreements and records that the banks have to turn over when the government asks. You think your silver is private? It's not. The bank knows you have a box. They have records of when you access it. And if the government decides they need to confiscate precious metals again, they're going to start with the easiest targets. The ones they can find with a simple database search. Now let me tell you about the alternative that most people don't consider. Home storage. And I know what you're thinking, but that's not safe. What about theft? What about fire? Valid concerns. But here's the reality. A good home safe, properly installed and hidden, is actually more secure than a bank-safe deposit box in a crisis scenario. Why? Because you control access. The government can't just show up and take it without a warrant specific to your property. And even then, they have to know it's there. There's no central database of home safes. No rental agreement with your name on it pointing to your precious metals. And modern home safes are incredibly sophisticated. We're not talking about the little lockbox you can carry out under your arm. I'm talking about 500-pound safes that are bolted to the foundation of your house, fireproof up to 1700 degrees for 2 hours, with digital locks and relockers that engage if someone tries to force entry. These things are serious pieces of security equipment, and they cost less than a year's worth of safe deposit box rental fees at most banks. But here's the key. Diversification. You don't put all your silver in one place. Not in a bank, not at home, not anywhere. You spread it out. Some at home in a quality safe, some in a private vault facility that's not a bank and not subject to the same regulations. Maybe some buried in a secure location that only you know about. The point is, you eliminate single points of failure. Because if there's one thing history teaches us, it's that centralized storage of wealth is always vulnerable to confiscation, whether by governments, criminals, or failed institutions. Let me tell you about a guy I know. We'll call him Robert. Robert had been stacking silver for 15 years. He had about 3,000 ounces, all stored in a safe deposit box at a major national bank. He felt secure. The bank was solid, the vault was impressive, and he could sleep at night knowing his silver was safe. Then in 2020, During the COVID lockdowns, his bank branch closed. Not permanently, but for weeks at a time due to staffing issues and health protocols. Robert couldn't access his silver. The price of silver spiked from $12 to $30 an ounce during that period. He wanted to sell some to take profits, but he couldn't get to it. By the time the branch reopened and he could access his box, silver had dropped back to $24. He missed the peak entirely because he didn't control access to his own wealth. That experience changed his entire approach. He pulled everything out of the bank, bought a high-quality safe, installed it in his home, and now he controls his silver completely. Can he access it at 2 a.m. if he needs to? Yes. Can the government seize it without a specific warrant for his property? No. Can the bank restrict his access during a crisis? Absolutely not. He eliminated the middleman and all the risks that come with it. And speaking of risks, let's talk about something that's happening right now that almost nobody is paying attention to. Bail-ins. You know what a bailout is, right? When the government uses taxpayer money to rescue a failing bank. Well, a bail-in is different. A bail-in is when the bank uses depositor money to rescue itself, and it's completely legal under the Dodd-Frank Act passed after the 2008 crisis. If a bank is failing, they can convert your deposits into bank equity. Your cash becomes stock in a failing bank. And guess what else they can claim? Assets held in safe deposit boxes as part of the bank's estate in bankruptcy proceedings. Now, I know that sounds crazy. How can they claim your silver that's in a safe deposit box? Because legally, the contents of a safe deposit box can be considered part of the bank's assets under certain bankruptcy scenarios, especially if there's any ambiguity about ownership, or if the bank claims a lien. And trust me, in a crisis, banks will claim anything they can to stay solvent. You'll be fighting in bankruptcy court for years trying to prove ownership and get your metal back. Meanwhile, silver prices are soaring and you're stuck in legal limbo. Here's another scenario that keeps me up at night. Digital currency. The Federal Reserve is actively developing a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. They're not hiding it. It's public information. And when they roll it out, which could be in the next few years, they're going to want to eliminate competition. What's the biggest competition to a digital dollar? Physical precious metals. Gold and silver that can be used for barter and trade outside the digital system. And how do you eliminate that competition? You make it illegal to own, just like they did in 1933. And where do you start confiscating? The places where you have records. Bank safe deposit boxes. I want you to think about the timeline we're on right now. We've got a debt crisis that's unsustainable. We've got foreign nations abandoning the dollar. We've got a Federal Reserve that's trapped between inflation and recession with no good options. We've got banks that are increasingly fragile and closing services like safe deposit boxes. We've got a government that's expanding its surveillance and seizure powers. And we've got a population that's waking up to the value of precious metals as protection against all of this chaos. What do you think happens when all these trends converge? Let me tell you what I think happens. I think we're heading for a monetary reset. Not in some distant future, but in the next few years. Maybe sooner. And when that reset happens, the government is going to need hard assets to back whatever new currency system they implement. And they're going to take those assets from wherever they can find them most easily. And the easiest place to find them is in bank safe deposit boxes with nice, neat records and compliant institutions that have to follow government orders. Now, here's where this gets personal for a lot of people. If you're sitting on $100,000 or more in retirement accounts, you need to understand something. Those accounts are denominated in dollars. And if the dollar collapses, your retirement collapses with it. I put together a free guide on how gold IRAs work. It's in the description below. It covers how to get physical gold into your retirement account without tax penalties, and how to store it in a way that you actually control. It's worth checking out if you're serious about protecting your retirement from what's coming. But back to the main point. Bank storage of silver is a trap. It's a trap that feels safe, because banks are familiar and regulated and official-looking. But that's exactly what makes them dangerous. They're part of the system. And when the system is in crisis, everything connected to it becomes a liability. Your silver in a bank safe deposit box is connected to the banking system, the regulatory system, the government surveillance system. It's all linked together. And when one part fails, it all fails. Compare that to silver stored privately, outside the banking system. It's not on any government database. There's no rental agreement with your name on it. There's no bank that can restrict your access or hand over records to authorities. It's just you and your metal. That's real ownership. That's real security. Everything else is an illusion of security that evaporates the moment there's a crisis. And we're not talking about some hypothetical crisis in the distant future. We're talking about things that are happening right now. Banks are failing. Governments are seizing assets. Currency systems are being challenged. The price of silver is being suppressed by paper contracts while physical demand is exploding. There's a massive disconnect between the paper price and the physical reality. And when that disconnect resolves, it's going to be violent and sudden. And if your silver is locked in a bank when that happens, you're going to be on the wrong side of history. Let me give you some specific numbers that illustrate what's happening. The U.S. Mint sold over 47 million Silver Eagles in 2023. That's the highest demand in years, but the price barely moved. Why? Because the paper silver market on the COMEX is 250 times larger than the physical market. For every ounce of real silver, there are 250 paper claims on that same ounce. It's a fractional reserve system just like banking. And just like banking, it only works as long as everyone doesn't demand physical delivery at the same time. But what happens when they do? The system breaks, and the people holding paper claims get nothing. And the people who can't access their physical silver because it's locked in a bank, they're in the same boat. The smart money is already moving. Central banks bought over 1,000 tons of gold in 2023. That's the highest level in 55 years. They're not buying paper gold. They're buying physical bars and storing them in their own vaults. Why? Because they know what's coming. They know the dollar system is ending. They know precious metals are going to be the foundation of whatever comes next, and they're positioning themselves accordingly. Shouldn't you be doing the same thing? But here's the thing. You can't position yourself properly if your silver is trapped in a bank. You need immediate access. You need control. You need to be able to move quickly when the situation demands it. And bank storage prevents all of that. It's a bottleneck. It's a single point of failure. It's a vulnerability that could cost you everything at the worst possible moment. I want you to imagine a scenario. It's 3 years from now. The dollar has lost half its value due to inflation and loss of reserve currency status. Silver has spiked to $100 an ounce as people flee to hard assets. The government announces a new digital currency and declares that all precious metals must be registered and potentially exchanged for the new currency at government-set rates. They give you 90 days to comply, and they start with the easy targets, the safe deposit boxes. The banks hand over the records. The government knows exactly who has what and where, and they show up with legal orders to seize the contents. What are you going to do? Fight it in court? Good luck. That'll take years and cost a fortune in legal fees. Meanwhile, your silver is gone. Now imagine a different scenario. Same situation, but your silver is stored privately outside the banking system. The government doesn't know you have it. There's no record linking you to it. You have time to decide what to do. You can hold it. You can sell it privately. You can use it for barter. You have options. You have control. You have freedom. That's the difference between bank storage and private storage. It's the difference between being a sitting duck and being able to maneuver. And let's talk about the practical aspects of moving your silver out of a bank. It's not complicated. You go to the bank, access your box, remove your silver, and close the account. Simple. But you need to have a plan for where it's going. Don't just bring it home and stick it in a closet. Invest in proper storage. A quality safe, properly installed. Or a private vault facility that's not a bank. Or multiple locations for diversification. The point is, you're taking control. You're removing yourself from the system that's designed to fail. And here's something else to consider. The psychological aspect. When your silver is in a bank, you don't really feel like you own it. It's out of sight, out of mind. You might check on it once a year, maybe less. But when it's in your home, in your safe, you're connected to it. You understand its weight, its value, its reality. It's not just a number on a rental agreement. It's physical wealth that you can see and touch. And that connection changes how you think about it and how you use it strategically. I've talked to hundreds of people who've made the switch from bank storage to private storage, and almost all of them say the same thing. They wish they'd done it sooner. They feel more secure, more in control, more prepared for whatever comes. And they sleep better at night, knowing that their wealth isn't dependent on a bank's solvency or a government's restraint. The bottom line is this: we're living in unprecedented times. The financial system is more fragile than it's ever been. The government is more intrusive than it's ever been. The currency is being debased faster than ever before. And precious metals are more important than ever as a hedge against all of this chaos. But that hedge only works if you actually control your metals. If they're sitting in a bank safe deposit box, you don't control them. The bank does. The government does. Anyone but you. And that's a risk you can't afford to take. So here's what I want you to do. If you have silver in a bank safe deposit box right now, make a plan to move it. This week. Not next month. Not when you get around to it. This week. Because every day you wait is another day of exposure to risks that are growing, not shrinking. The banking system isn't getting more stable. The government isn't getting less aggressive. The currency isn't getting stronger. Everything is moving in the wrong direction, and your window to act is closing. Get a quality safe. Find a private vault facility. Diversify your storage locations. But whatever you do, get your silver out of the bank. Because when this system finally breaks, and it will break, the people who waited too long are going to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between ownership and custody. Don't be one of them. Take control of your wealth while you still can. Your future self will thank you.